Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jeff Vaughn.
And I'm Lena Wynn. The Trump administration could be getting a noticeably different look soon. That's because a reported shakeup is brewing within the White House. KCAL9 political reporter Dave Bryan shows us what's behind the move and why. Dave?
The question is this just the beginning or is it just the end of it? Was a White House resignation today one of a kind or the beginning of a serious turnover in top officials, focusing on the communications at a time when President Trump is reportedly frustrated that his message and agenda is swamped by the continuing investigations and charges? In what may be the beginning of a White House shakeup, President Trump's communications director, Michael Dubke, announced his resignation. The reasons for my departure are personal, he wrote. But CBS News reports Dubke may be the first of many White House officials to hit the road, triggered by President Trump's frustration with his communications operation. And the president may be reaching back to his successful campaign days to fix the problems. On Monday, he met at the White House with two former campaign communications officials, Corey Lewandowski and David Bossie, who are under consideration to lead a White House war room in response to the federal investigations of the White House by the FBI and Congress, most notably the many Russia investigations. At the center of those investigations now is Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, who reportedly suggested setting up back-channel communications between the Trump transition team and the Kremlin. Burbank Congressman Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, wants to know more about why all the Kushner secrecy tactics.
They raise a question about who would these conversations be concealed from, and if it was trying to conceal them from the Obama administration, of course, we would want to know why that was taking place.
And Santa Monica Congressman Ted Lieu told CNN Tuesday he wants to know if then-President-elect Trump knew about the Kushner back-channel request to Russia.
The investigations are getting closer to President Trump. And with respect to Kushner, one of the questions is, did he ask his son-in-law to talk about these secret back-channel meetings, or was this something that Kushner came up with by himself?
Sources are telling CBS News Kushner's rivals on the staff are now taking shots at him and creating a sense that he's now vulnerable for the first time. But Kushner won't be an easy target for White House critics. President Trump has clearly demonstrated he values Kushner's work, right down to putting him in key positions during last week's overseas meetings with world leaders. At the Tuesday White House news briefing, though, Press Secretary Sean Spicer brushed aside questions about Kushner and the Russia investigation.
I'm not going to dignify partisan accusations of anonymous sources and alleged unsubstantiated attacks.
At the same time, Mr. Trump is back to expressing his anger and blaming the news media for his problems, tweeting, "It is my opinion that many of the leaks coming out of the White House are fabricated lies made up by the fake news media." His press secretary told reporters it's not the White House staff that's the problem.
Are you saying that reports that there's going to be an overhaul of the communications operation are fake news?
The reason that the president is frustrated is because there's a perpetuation of false narratives, a use of unnamed sources over and over again about things that are happening that don't ultimately happen, and I think that is troubling.
And in a related development, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has agreed to provide some documents to the Senate Intelligence Committee by next week as part of its investigation of Russian election meddling. Flynn's decision comes after he invoked the Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination in declining an earlier request from the committee. On another level, there's also concern tonight about U.S. relations with European allies like Germany. The New York Times reports tonight the bad vibes between President Trump and German Chancellor Angela Merkel were not soothed by a Trump tweet this morning charging that the U.S. trade deficit with Germany is massive and they're not paying enough on NATO and the military. The tweet ended with the demand from the president, "This will change."
Well, Dave, I know there's a lot that the president wants to do, health care, tax reform. So what impact is all of this having on his agenda?
It's having a very significant impact, to say the least. In fact, in some respects, the impact has been devastating to President Trump's agenda. The opening months of a new administration, especially when the president's party controls both houses of Congress, that's usually a bonanza for the ruling party. But so far, 4 months in, this hasn't been the case, due in large part to the fact that the constant news of investigations has taken the president's time and attention away from his legislative agenda, including cutting taxes, changing the health care system, and a long list of other goals. That's one of the chief reasons the president is reportedly getting very frustrated and angry, because the clock is ticking, and if this continues to the midterm campaigns next year, it could be a very serious problem for President Trump. Jeff, Lena?
Yeah, Dave, thank you so much. Well,